Has anyone seen a crow fishing? They've been filmed doing that. They get a piece of bread and they dangle it in the water, and then when a fish comes along and tries to get the bread, they drop the bread and grab the fish. So the bread is, to the crow, what the Palestinians are to most of the Arab world. I'm Granniopteryx. All right. Did you know that there were 2 refugee relief agencies that the UN is running? One of them is the UNHCR. Here we are. The United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And these are the sort of people that the UNHCR looks after. People in Sudan, for instance. Look how they're all, you might say in a very civilized way, waiting for, well, what looks like some sort of relief item, medicines, food, that sort of thing. The UNHCR has a budget for looking after refugees throughout the whole world. And once the refugees have been sorted out and resettled in various ways, the UNHCR moves on to another set of refugees. But there is another refugee agency that the United Nations is running, and we're all paying for it, inasmuch as every country contributes to the UN, and the UN gives a certain amount of money to the relief agencies. It gives a certain amount to UNHCR, and it gives about the same, or possibly more, I don't have the figures to hand, to the UNRWA. The UNRWA is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. That is just refugees from Palestine. And you will notice here, that's in Arabic there. So, and that gets as much to run itself as the UNHCR gets for dealing with the whole world. And we're still paying for that, of course. And that's because when the Israel-Arab War happened in 1948, the Arab countries refused to accept the refugees or absorb them. So they were camped in tents around the area of Israel, and they were told by their Arab brothers that they were going to go back to Israel sooner or later when their Arab brothers had destroyed Israel. Well, that didn't happen. But the thing about the UNRWA is that the UNRWA is the only refugee agency that exists to keep refugees as refugees. The UNHCR is supposed to resettle refugees, and within the theory is, within a few years, all those refugees will be gone, resettled elsewhere, rehomed, taking up new citizenships in other countries maybe, but moved on and settled down. UNRWA is there for the sole purpose of keeping the refugees in the status of refugees for as many generations as it takes to destroy Israel. That's it. Now, they were a political tool. This whole thing was set up by the Arabs in 1948. They thought they were going to make things, bad for Israel and the West. In fact, they've made things a lot worse for themselves because they don't know how to handle the Palestinian refugees as well. And I'll tell you something else about the UNRWA. It runs schools. And these schools have been taken over by Palestinian radicals. And the books that they give to the people in their territory, the sort of things like this. Take a maths book, and it will run something like, my grandfather had 5 orange groves in Jaffa, and the Israelis stole 4 of them. How many olive groves does he have left? I'm serious. And there are other classes they run teaching kids how to stab Israelis, or really Jews. Let's be frank about this. So they have brought up a nation of psychopaths. And that's with the help of the UNRWA. And if there's anything that will come out, that could come out of this horrible situation at the moment between Israel and Gaza, it's that the UNRWA is wound up. And the UNHCR takes the job and tries to resettle these people in small doses elsewhere. I don't know how they're going to do it, but the UNRWA certainly not only can it not do that, it has no interest in doing that, because it's getting lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money from the UN, and that means from you as well. Okay, so I just wanted you to know about that. Now, recently, Hamas, which took over Gaza in 2006, Hamas has disgraced itself. It started off, they started off by denying that they killed any or injured any civilians. And then as the weight of evidence grew, they started to say, well, we might have killed one or two, but it was strictly an accident. And now Israel has shown the videos from the Hamas body cams to a selective group of reporters who will never be able to unsee those images ever again. And there is a big difference. I mean, not to the victims, obviously, but there is a big difference between the injury and death of people who are caught in the sort of bombing that a country will have to do to protect itself, and people who are tortured to death by terrorists who've invaded their country without warning and really, honestly, without cause. Because when Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, they left a whole infrastructure of factories, greenhouses, farms, all sorts of things that the Jewish settlers had installed there. And they were hauled out by the Israeli army in 2005. So anything about occupation, you can forget that. And they absolutely wrecked, they stole what they didn't wreck. And that's part of the reason why Gaza's in the fix it is. The Israelis had this wonderful image of that becoming a peaceful Singapore of the Mediterranean, and it turned into the shithole. And the other thing is that for all the billions of dollars that have gone into Gaza, most of it has gone into 500 miles of underground tunnels. In that little area, they say it's a small area, there are 500 miles there of tunnels which have been built to hide Hamas operations, to provide smuggling tunnels to Egypt, because Egypt blocked its border as well, of course, and to provide terror tunnels that go into Israel so they can pop up, shoot a few or slit a few throats, and then disappear back down into the tunnels and the safety of Gaza. That's why Israel is bombing that place so heavily right now. Okay, but the general Arab population around have been very much embarrassed by what's going on. Just a minute. Sorry about that. My husband let the dog in because he was whining outside the door. He didn't realise I was recording this. All right, so he's been sick. Not my husband, the dog. Right. So I was talking about the miles of tunnel which Hamas were using to hide in, to attack Israel through, to smuggle. Egypt also had a wall to Gaza. They didn't want them either. And Hamas were building tunnels under the wall so they could smuggle things through, and then they were charging the local people extortionate rates for their smuggled goods. Or they were actually charging people prices for going through the tunnels to get to Egypt, to visit friends and relatives or whatever, because most of the people in Gaza are of Egyptian origin anyway. Don't let them tell you they've been in that area from time immemorial. They haven't. Look, I'm getting distracted. This incident with Hamas has been colossally embarrassing for the Arabs, the ones who are thinking. And there are Arabs who think, you don't get that idea when you see them dancing around like bloody idiots, ululating and passing sweets round. But there are thinkers as well in the Arab world. Of course, they have to keep relatively quiet. So if you find an Arab speaking out and still living in Saudi Arabia, then it is with the blessing in one way or another of the Saudi government. And it's usually because other people around him are saying the same things. And now I'm going to play this to you, because here you see a good example of how the Saudis are losing patience with the Frankenstein monster that they created. So now, look, he's going to be talking Arabic. There are subtitles here. I know some people access my videos and they can't see so well. So I'm going to read out the subtitles to the Arabic. Sorry about that for the people who might find that a little repetitive. Okay, so he starts off by saying, there's nothing Saudi Arabia didn't give you. Well, yeah, there is something. They could have given them homes to start with. In many ways, I'm with this guy, so I'm not going to be too hard on him. He says, it even established a state for you. This is something I didn't know. King Fahd, that's 1982 to 2005. When President Reagan asked him to finance the Contra's rebel groups, didn't know about that either, he said, one good turn deserves another. Give me a Palestinian state. And Reagan agreed. King Fahd informed Arafat they have gotten a Palestinian state. And I'm Granniopteryx, reminding you to click that like button. I'm sorry to have interrupted Rauf bin Assain's diatribe, but I have to tell you that links to all my channels are in the description, as well as links for donation sites. If you wish to donate, I'm very grateful for that. But really, the best way you can help this channel and this video is to like it, to subscribe, to click the notification button, and oh yeah, that's it. All right, back to Mr. bin Assain. King Fahd informed Arafat they have gotten a Palestinian state. Arafat ran away and agreed to meet King Fahd. Only 10 years after all of this, Arafat wasn't interested in a Palestinian state. No, he wasn't. And during the Oslo, the thing with Clinton, bringing them all together, Arafat kept asking for more and more concessions. And the Israeli side kept giving him more and more concessions. And then finally, he just upped and Arafat just upped and left. He'd got all the concessions he wanted, but he didn't really want a Palestinian state. So he finally found an excuse to throw a pet and leave the room. Okay, anyway, this guy here, Rauf bin Assain, says that Arafat wasn't interested. Arafat wasn't interested in a Palestinian state. None of you want a Palestinian state. It's not grammatical, but never mind. Since you have no case, no country, and no land. What this man is saying is that as a Saudi, he knows that Israel doesn't belong to the Palestinians, and they don't have any case for it. And then he puts his argument for that. This land belongs to Israel. according to the Quran. And in this way, he is absolutely right. Somewhere in the Quran, Muhammad says to the Jews, there was a huge Jewish community in Arabia at that time. Later on, Muhammad did his best to eradicate them, drive them out, murder them, enslave them, all the rest of it. But at the time he was at the early stages, hoping to make friends with the Jews, he said, God said, or Allah said, that Israel was the land of the Jews and that was their land. So it is there in the Quran if you want to take any notice of it. And now it looks like Saudi is taking notice of it. And he says here, and you are a displaced people scattered from all over, Mongols, Turkmens, Circassians, Armenians, Gypsies. That's not strictly true. As a matter of fact, most of the so-called Palestinians are Saudi or Arabians and Egyptians, some Syrians. There are even some Albanians there. They came in the 1920s because the Jews were making a go of that place at a time when after the Ottoman Empire had collapsed, economic stagnation and confusion in all the surrounding area. But the Jewish presence there and the British mandate had created stability and job opportunities. So they came flooding in. And I think it was Winston Churchill who wrote back to London, to head office, saying something like, that there's an unstemmable tide of Arabs coming from Egypt and Arabia, and they're becoming unmanageable, and they're all illegal immigrants, but they can't stop them. Where have I heard that before? Oh, well, never mind. I can't remember right now. Okay, but this guy says they're all these different races. Most likely not. They are mostly Saudi, well, rather Arabian. But of course, he's not going to say that because it means they'd have to take them back. You have nothing in Palestine. Well, not now they haven't. Palestine is the state of Israel for the people of Israel. And the people of Israel, just so you'll know, the people of Israel are the sons of Isaac, and we Arabs are the sons of Ishmael. They were brothers, and their father was Abraham. So he's making a direct reference to the Abraham Accords, which were thrashed out by Donald Trump. And my firm belief is that if he was still the president, this whole horrible mess would not have happened. Anyway, Ralph says, that makes them our cousins, but where did you come from? Well, we'll give that a pass. How are you a part of all this? In fact, what the Saudi government is doing now is cancelling the Palestinians. They never existed. You were scattered. Again, Gypsies, Mongols, Turkmens, Circassians, Romans. Leftovers of other people. Oh, how low can you go? How are you a part of all this, he says. How are you a part of us? The people of Israel live in their land, but you have no land and no case. Don't try to fool us. Don't try to remind us that half of you are us anyway. And about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, just so you'll know, there's no such thing as Al-Aqsa. There is only Al-Quds, Jerusalem. And here he's referring to this. The Christians who controlled Jerusalem built a church over the wreckage of the temple. When the Christians were conquered by Saladin's forces, the Muslims, well, the Omar, the caliph, he built a mosque over the church. In fact, much of the architecture of the mosque, if you look at it, you'll see Byzantine columns and things that they used from the church. Now, at the other side, there was a smaller mosque, and that was called Al-Aqsa for a reason. Muhammad had a dream, which he said was a reality, and he went on a flying animal to the furthest mosque, it says. Now, at the time when Muhammad was talking about this, Islam was only in the Arabian Peninsula. And there were two mosques right at the edge of the peninsula. And one of them was the nearest mosque and the other one was called the furthest mosque. It was almost at the edge of the Arabian Peninsula. And that is, Al-Aqsa means the furthest. And that is the furthest mosque in the Quran. It was decided to call that little mosque at the side Al-Aqsa, the furthest, in order to draw pilgrims to Jerusalem, because at the time the Caliph was having a spat with Mecca. Islam was already fragmenting into different pressure and political groups. So that's what was happening there. Al-Aqsa Mosque is actually a mosque in Arabia. The Al-Aqsa Mosque mentioned in the Quran is located in Ju'arana, 29 kilometers from the city of Ta'if. There were two mosques there, Al-Aqsa, the furthest, and Al-Adna, the closer. Your Al-Aqsa Mosque was built by Hisham in the year 682. How could Muhammad visit a structure which was built in the year 682, 60 years after he died? Who are you trying to fool? That should be whom. You Palestinians, you are not Arabs. Well, I'm sorry to have to say this, but yes, they are. They've just been brought up by a psychopathic regime funded by you. And not willingly. I'm not accusing anyone of funding that willingly, except the people who are running UNRWA, and they're very willing because it's a really juicy living. You have no land and no case. The land belongs to Israel, and the case is the case of Israel. Back then, Israeli prime ministers Yitzhak Shamir, Rabin, Sharon, Golda Meir, Rabin, Sharon, Golda Meir. I forget another one. They were heroes. Did you know? But Prime Minister Netanyahu is a coward. Because Netanyahu didn't burn you. Netanyahu, burn these criminals. Dispose of them already for your sake, the world's and ours. نتنياهو أحرق هالعصابات هذه وهالشتات وهالملفقين وريح نفسك وريح العالم منهم وريحنا احنا منهم. ليش مخليهم؟ Why do you keep them? Why did you open the borders and let them escape? In Jordan, they caused the Black September. Yeah, Arafat tried to start a revolution against King Hussein, and King Hussein retaliated with his army. It was not shown the things that the Jordanian army did to the Arafat's army were hardly caused a ripple in British newspapers at any rate. And so what did they do? They went to Lebanon. They ran to Lebanon and they destroyed Lebanon. Lebanon was foolish enough to give them sanctuary. Anyway, he said they caused Black September in 1970. And then he says in Kuwait, they plundered when Saddam Hussein occupied the country in 1991. They wore the Iraqi army uniform and looted stores. They kept on being mean and despicable. It's part of their education and who they are. Well, certainly it's part of their education. They're human beings, and they can be psychopathized as well as any other human being can be psychopathized. Yeah, I know that's not a word, but you tell me a better one. If you're a man, Netanyahu, why not do the world a favor and get rid of them? May God curse you and curse you, meaning the Palestinians, and curse even Netanyahu for not getting rid of you. Because Netanyahu threw you a life preserver. He's the one who's supposed to torment you and dispose the world of your evil deeds. You Palestinians are evil in any country you set foot on. Pure evil and no dissent man amongst you. He's saying nobody dissents from... But the fact is that Hamas... well, you may dissent, but you won't be alive very long to make your second dissent. I'm willing... yeah. You know, Jews have a pretty low status in Muslim society. So he's saying something really incredible here. I'm willing to spend the night with a Jew and not a Palestinian. I'm willing to host a Jew in my house, give him food and water and a bed to sleep in, and not let a Palestinian enter my house. Thank you and goodbye. Well, you know, if an Israeli came out with stuff like that, it would be all around the internet as an example of Israeli cruelty and viciousness. But it's not all round the internet, and the BBC isn't talking about it because, well, yeah, it's an obvious Arab, and they're a bit more careful about criticising Arabs, aren't they? So I thought, well, here you have an example of a man who is obviously infuriated by what Hamas has done to the Arab reputation. I mean, it was fairly low in the world, but now it's probably even lower. Well, except for within the BBC. But recently, the Israeli government showed a group of selected journalists the videos that were taken by the Hamas body cams. And I think maybe even the BBC won't be able to ignore those, although they'll have a damn good try, I suppose. All right, well, that's it. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.